Ce qui fait la différence entre un acte mauvais et un acte bon ou indifférent, c'est le scandale, a écrit Jacques Gay, auteur québécois. Bienvenue sur le plateau des grands formats du sport consacré aux grands scandales de la boxe. Pour illustrer cette émission, nous avons choisi de diffuser un remarquable documentaire qui revient sur l'histoire tragique d'un combat. Nous sommes le 16 juin 1983 au Madison Square Garden et Billy Collins affronte Luis Resto. Vraisemblablement orchestré par Panama Lewis, entraîneur pour le moins douteux, voire véreux, une tricherie terrible va briser la vie de ces deux jeunes boxeurs. Avant d'en parler avec notre invité, Jean-Philippe Lustig, docteur S-Box, s'il en est, regardons ensemble Assault in the Ring, réalisé par Eric Drath.
Let me ask you a question. 1983 was the best year of your life,
Yeah,
but also the worst year of your life.
no. That was the best year and the worst night. Oh.
J'ai remarqué que, aussi longtemps qu'ils en sont capables, les boxeurs marchent en roulant des mécaniques, même quand ils ont 54 ans, même si des décennies ont passé depuis leur dernier succès sur le ring, même quand ils finissent dans la pauvreté, dans la déchéance, loin de la vie de luxe qu'on leur faisait miroiter s'ils consacraient leur vie à cogner sur un adversaire. La poursuite de cet idéal a conduit cet homme dans un sous-sol sombre et délabré. Elle a plongé sa vie dans la solitude et le désespoir.
Before that thing happened, I wanted to commit suicide. I didn't care if I die or not.
Son histoire commence un jour très précis, il y a 26 ans. Un soir qui aurait dû être le plus beau jour de sa vie.
What he did is inexcusable. He should be banned from the sport forever. There shouldn't be any forgiveness.
Look at Resto go toe-to-toe as again Collins desperately trying to come up with a big one.
It's probably one of the most serious offenses ever committed inside the ring.
He lost his life, he lost his career, he lost his family, he lost everything. He didn't lose the fight, but he lost the fight.
Sometimes I feel like crying, you know. Why? You know, why they did that to the globe?
Je m'appelle Eric Drath. Avant de tourner des films, j'étais agent de boxeur. J'en représentais plus d'une dizaine à travers le monde. En travaillant dans ce milieu sportif, j'ai entendu quantité d'histoires tristes, mais pas aussi tristes que celle de Luis Resto. J'ai fait la connaissance de Luis au club de boxe du Morris Park dans le Bronx à New York. J'avais entendu des bribes de son histoire et je voulais en savoir plus. J'ai ainsi appris qu'il était né à Porto Rico. Sa mère a décidé de migrer seule à New York avec ses 6 enfants. Luis s'est mis à la boxe pour éviter de traîner dans les rues. Il a été champion des Golden Gloves. Il a même participé aux qualifications pour les Jeux Olympiques de 1976. Mais dès qu'il est devenu professionnel, sa carrière s'est mise à stagner. En 1983, il était surtout connu comme un adversaire pugnace et expérimenté pour les jeunes boxeurs talentueux. Il était l'adversaire idéal à battre pour devenir une vedette.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next bout of the evening is a 10-round junior middleweight bout.
The
The night of June 16th, 1983 was magical.
It was a big night. Roberto Duran was fighting Davey Moore for the junior middleweight championship.
Every single seat in Madison Square Garden was filled. Every single seat. The atmosphere was unbelievable.
Au milieu des stars et des légendes, il y a Luis Resto, en compagnie de Panama Lewis, un entraîneur assez connu.
Louis Resto was a fighter who was just rough and tough. On any night, Louis could give anybody in that division a fight.
I saw him as a journeyman, as a tough guy that you prove yourself against to get that shot.
And in the blue corner, from Nashville, Tennessee, Irish Billy Collins.
We'll never know how far Billy Collins could have gone. You want to give him the benefit of the doubt. He was an undefeated prospect.
You got an Irish kid, and you got a straight kid, and you got him in New York, and what else you want? It would be an entertaining fight, it would be a tough fight, a lot of punching going on, and in the end, Billy would win. It seemed to me he would always win.
L'histoire de Billy Collins avait tout pour séduire le monde de la boxe. Un Irlandais invaincu, né au Tennessee, pourri de talent et bel homme. Son père avait été boxeur professionnel, mais il n'avait jamais eu l'occasion de se battre pour un titre. Le père entraînait son garçon. Billy Junior cherchait à présent la gloire qui avait fui son père. Il offrait ainsi l'espoir à une famille qui vivait dans la misère.
They was poor. You'd pull in the dirt driveway with potholes, and you would, go to the house. I remember the first time, plastic on the windows, and ceilings real low. You'd almost have to duck to get in the back part of the house, and they was just real poor.
Les uppercuts de Billy, âgé de 21 ans, semblaient tracer la voie menant de la pauvreté à la gloire.
Yeah, he was more like a celebrity in town, stuff,
They knew he was a fighter, and people would want to test Billy to see if they could whoop him. Most of the time it was just one punch. Billy would hit him. We'd get in our car and leave, and it'd be over with.
Good uppercut. That uppercut, very effective by Collins. It hurts by even down.
Billy Collins was promoted by Top Rank, among the leaders in boxing promotion.
They were grooming Billy Collins to become a superstar.
Man, he was tremendous. I mean, he was a great-looking kid. He had all the moves. He punched like a mule. I mean, if this kid can make it through, we got a gold mine here.
Let's have a fine hand for Irish Billy Collins.
What I remember about the fight as I watched it was just one thing. One fighter was getting a beating.
Resto scoring a combination with the face of Billy Collins. Little bruise under the left eye of Collins. Some puffiness already.
You saw it in Billy Collins' face. You saw the toll the punches were taking.
Collins walked into a big right hand. And another right by Resto.
This has become more of a street fight now.
When I watched that fight, I didn't think a crime was happening.
And Resto not showing any signs of fatigue. He's still throwing punches a mile a minute. Now that bulge under the left eye of Collins has finally opened up.
I just thought he ran into a tough guy with a tough punch, and he took the punch, but man, this guy can hit because of the damage it was doing to Billy's face.
Bruising under both eyes of Billy Collins.
He's in bad shape now, though, Ray.
It has been a brawl. Look at Resto now. Collins is hurt again.
This fight should be stopped, too.
He was just pounding.
You did good, son. You're fighting hard out there.
And Collins had all the heart in the world and wouldn't quit.
And the final minute of the fight. Resto continues to wail away. Collins taking a real beating here.
Well, I wouldn't want to see him stop now, Tim.
There's the bell for the end of the fight.
Collins n'avait jamais subi une telle correction. Après l'annonce de la décision unanime des juges, la déception était terrible. Quant à Panama, il souleva son boxeur sur le ring du Madison Square Garden. Resto, le portoricain du Bronx, aux statistiques médiocres, venait de démolir le Golden Boy irlandais, invaincu jusque-là. Soudain, Comme ça arrive à l'occasion dans la boxe, le combat connut un tout autre épilogue.
When Resto crosses the ring and gives Colin the Judas kiss, as he's turning away, you can see Billy Ray's father's hand.
I don't think Billy Collins Sr., from what he told me, even thought that there might have been something wrong with the gloves until the very end of the fight. Otherwise, he would have pointed it out. It was at the end of the fight, when Resto went over to congratulate him, that he grabbed onto the gloves and held on, and he started screaming for the inspectors, these gloves, these gloves.
What's fascinating is to look at who Louis Resto looks at.
Not looking down surprised at the gloves or wondering what's going on or looking at Collins and saying, what are you talking about? But immediately turning to his co-conspirator and waving him over. Panama just jumps in and starts yelling, those are the gloves you gave us. Those are the gloves you gave us.
That's the glove they gave us. That's the glove they gave us. That's the glove they gave us.
Luis Resto fut aussitôt accompagné dans les vestiaires par le juge Tony Perez, qui devait récupérer ses gants de boxe.
They didn't want to take him off. They wanted to go out and I said, no, take him off. Take him off the glove. I want to see those gloves. I got a complaint here. I want to see those gloves. When I saw the gloves and I handed it to it, I knew there was something wrong with the gloves. There's something missing. Absolutely.
The decision was unanimous in favor of Luis Resto, but shortly after the fight, Collins' handlers charged that Resto's gloves had been tampered with, that some of the required padding had been secretly and illegally removed, adding extra impact to Resto's punches. The New York State Athletic Commission apparently was suspicious, and they impounded Luis Resto's gloves.
I saw 2 pairs of boxing gloves. Two had R on it and 2 had C on it. I observed a hole in the left and right glove that was marked R. Any layman could tell that the glove was tampered with.
Il n'y a pas plus épouvantable crime dans la boxe que de trafiquer les gants. Ce sport est déjà violent en soi. En éliminant le rembourrage de ses gants, un boxeur acquiert un avantage qui est potentiellement mortel. 2 semaines après le combat, la commission de boxe de l'État de New York convoque les protagonistes. Resto et Panama, ainsi que ses hommes de coin, Artie Kirtley et Pedro Alvarado, sont sommés de s'expliquer. Les 4 hommes nient en bloc les accusations.
All right, it's June 29th, 1983. I'm with the New York State Athletic Commission. Purposes of this tape to record a hearing, Louis Resto versus Billy Collins controversy.
The hearing, it was almost a foregone conclusion. I think it was, in some ways, it was more for the process than it was for the discovery of a truth.
La commission de boxe de l'État de New York prit aussitôt des sanctions.
Luis Resto was suspended indefinitely, and trainer Panama Lewis has been suspended for life.
I think it's the severest action we've taken in the 5 years that I've been at the commission, but I don't think it unwarranted.
18 jours après ce qui fut brièvement sa plus grande victoire, la carrière de Luis Resto est brisée. Mais pour Luis et bien d'autres, les conséquences néfastes de ce combat nocturne ne faisaient que commencer.
Really, I don't know who did that thing to the glove. I wouldn't know, I don't fight.
En entendant Luis Resto clamer son innocence et affirmer qu'il ignorait qui avait trafiqué ses gants de boxe 24 ans auparavant, je le crus sur parole. Mais j'ai eu bien du mal à trouver des documents ou des personnes fiables susceptibles de découvrir ce qui s'était réellement passé.
It could have been Artie Curley, another one of his cornermen. It could have been another cornerman, Pedro Alvarado. We don't know. But being that Panama Lewis was the head of the camp that night, he was the chief second. He knows who did it.
This protect your hand. The gloves are just, if you don't wrap right when you punch, you know, that's the worst night of my life. Once the hand goes, career done. Like a horse, race horse. The leg get messed up, you gotta shoot it. Same thing here. I don't know if the glove was never touched. So they wanted to nail me to the wall. They wanted to take me to the game because I was winning too many fights.
Panama Lewis avait déjà eu des ennuis avant d'être l'homme du coin de ring de Luis Resto en juin 1983. 7 mois auparavant, il avait été soupçonné de tricherie lors d'un combat pour un titre de champion entre Aaron Pryor et Alexis Arguello. Entre chaque round, les micros des caméras enregistraient Panama qui donnait l'ordre à son assistant, Artie Curley, de lui passer une bouteille d'eau. En précisant de façon suspecte de quelle bouteille il s'agissait. Après avoir bu le liquide de la mystérieuse bouteille, Pryor retrouva soudain du punch et remporta la victoire par KO. Panama avait-il mélangé des stimulants interdits dans la bouteille de son boxeur? Aucune preuve n'a jamais été trouvée.
Because I was the chief trainer, and because of my background, giving the back like one I mix and all that, they have me as a bad guy in boxing. It's the only thing I know to do, train fighters. And they took it away from me.
Panama Lewis n'a plus jamais travaillé comme homme de coin depuis le combat de Resto contre Collins. Au début des années 80, en dépit ou peut-être grâce aux faits obscurs qui l'entourent, Carlos Panama Lewis était l'entraîneur de boxe ayant connu l'ascension la plus fulgurante dans ce sport. Aux côtés des champions et des grands boxeurs de sa salle d'entraînement, Panama décida de prendre Luis Resto sous son aile.
What kind of fighter was he? Like when you first met him?
Yeah.
What did you think of him as a fighter?
Eddie was a brawler, non-stop punching. You see, they overlooked Resto because when he got knocked out, everybody thought he was finished. But I brought him back.
Resto with a tremendous comeback has stopped Sawyer. Larry Hazard stops the fight, and Louis Resto wins in the last round.
Avec Panama dans le coin du ring, le dur à cuire du Bronx, qui approche de la trentaine, recommença à gagner des combats.
I love Resto like a son. And I hope wherever he is, that he's doing good. God bless him. He's a great guy, a great man, great man.
It seemed like every time it hit me, I could feel knots come on my head, and my eyes already started to swell about the fourth, fifth round, and I just couldn't figure it out, and he hit me some good body shots, and I'd never been hit like that before in my life.
Why in the world didn't you go down, or did you think about quitting?
Well, about the seventh round, I got hit with a good shot in the rib, and I thought my rib was broke, but it crossed my mind, to go ahead and take a breather there, to squat down and get some breath, But, I guess pride or something, told me not to go down and just keep going. That's what I tried to do.
Durant 30 longues minutes, Collins encaissa des centaines de coups quasiment assénés à main nue. Mais il refusa de jeter l'éponge. Une épreuve de courage aveugle de la part d'un boxeur qui ne comprenait pas ce qui lui tombait dessus.
I called one of my photographers, Ben Sharav, and I said, you know what I want you to do? I know Billy's staying at the Southgate Towers. I want you to get there early in the morning. Bring your camera. And he took shots. I said to Ben, I wish you had the kid open his eyes. He said they were open.
The next day, when he got off the plane, his father was leading him. He was blind.
He had some sunglasses on, and he literally had to raise the skin around his eyes to take the sunglasses off.
It was like a horror picture, and I guess I looked away or something, and I remember the first thing he said, "I'm your husband, look at me."
Les contusions finirent par guérir, mais les médecins découvrirent que l'iris de son œil droit était déchiré. Quelques semaines auparavant, Billy était encore un des plus grands espoirs de la boxe. À présent, les médecins le mettaient en garde. S'il ne prenait pas sa retraite, il allait perdre la vue.
He didn't think he could work. He couldn't do anything. He couldn't hold a job. He had cataracts. We fought all the time.
I did sand one night, hit her, and It was a uppercut that shouldn't have happened, that's for sure.
And I ended up moving in with my parents because I was afraid he was going to kill me. And I still loved him. For the longest, he would just sit in the apartment and smoke and drink and trash the apartment by himself. He wasn't Billy anymore.
Au petit matin du 7 mars 1984, 9 mois après le combat qui avait détruit Billy Collins Jr. et provoqué le départ de son épouse et de sa fille, la descente aux enfers du boxeur irlandais se termine de façon tragique.
He was depressed of hearing that he would never fight again.
Billy and the guy from next door, a guy named Johnny Duke, come in. And I could tell, you know, Billy was a little drunk.
There was a place, a bar, not far from the house where you could shoot pool, and he wanted us to go. We chose not to go, and he left mad.
After they left, of course, Billy beat the crap out of Johnny, got the keys from him. And he told me that Billy looked at him and said that I'm just going to kill you, or I'm just going to kill us, or something.
À 1 kilomètre de sa maison, Billy Collins fit une sortie de route. La voiture s'écrasa en contrebas dans le lit asséché d'un ruisseau. Installé sur le siège du passager, Johnny Duke survécut miraculeusement. Billy, lui, fut tué sur le coup.
It's like everything was taken that night in the ring.
Irish Billy Collins avait 22 ans.
Yes, hello. Hi, Mr. Collins?
Yes, sir.
How are you? My name is Eric Trath. We're doing a documentary, the story of from the fight from 1983.
Well, I appreciate your concern, but I wouldn't be interested in it. My son is dead.
I know.
And they destroyed my life, and then nothing you can say in the papers or anything else, documentary or anything to cease my hurt or my family's position on this whole matter. My son was a great fighter, a great kid. My son never did nothing wrong. I hate to hang up on you, but
No, I understand.
But I don't want no part of it. Appreciate it.
All right.
En 1986, 2 ans après la mort de Billy Collins Jr., Louis continuait de clamer son innocence. Bien qu'il lui était interdit de pratiquer son sport, il était convaincu qu'il boxerait de nouveau un jour.
So you think you're innocent here?
Yeah, I'm innocent.
But you might go to jail.
Huh?
They might send you to jail.
Can be. I didn't do nothing. We didn't do nothing. Why are we gonna go to jail? We didn't kill that guy.
Mais il fut inculpé et passa en justice. Le procès de Louis Resto et de Panama Lewis débuta à New York le 22 septembre 1986.
There was a lot of gray area there, you know, in terms of the different seedy characters and, you know, knowing that they had pretty funky reputations and were doing a lot of, you know, interesting, lawless kind of things. That played into it.
There was a meeting before the fight in an apartment over a restaurant called Victor's,
at which Panama Lewis was present. My client, Louis Resto, was present, including apparently a fairly significant cocaine trafficker. The cocaine trafficker was in conversation with Panama Lewis concerning the fact that he had a substantial amount of money that he wanted to wager on the fight.
Louis comptait à l'époque 7 défaites sur 29 combats. Parier sur lui contre un super espoir comme Collins, qui n'avait jamais perdu, était très hasardeux.
Then Panama says, don't worry, I'll fix that. I'll take care of the gloves.
The decision was made that this fight was going to be tipped to go Louis Resto's way, and a lot of money was going to be made.
The bet was hearsay, somewhat circumstantial, and made sense there might have been something going on. There was some kind of gain that was going to happen for wanting to inflict a crime like this. But it was less of an issue in terms of the ultimate things we considered.
Parmi ces autres faits, il y avait les détails de ce qui s'était réellement passé cette nuit-là dans les vestiaires. Le ministère public affirma qu'une partie du rembourrage des gants avait été enlevée et jetée dans les toilettes. L'ex-entraîneur Lee Black, appelé comme témoin à la barre, disait savoir qui s'était rendu avec les gants dans les toilettes.
Lee Black confirmed that he went in the bathroom, that he said to Panama Lewis, "You're going to get somebody killed."
Devant la cour, Lee Black modifia sa version. Mais lorsque la cour fut mise au courant que Lee Black avait reçu des menaces de mort, l'ex-entraîneur confirma son premier témoignage.
He was compelling. He had something to say. Lee had something he wanted to say, but he also had something he was afraid to say. And that came through in terms of him wanting to coming forward, not coming forward, coming forward. That sort of added to his credibility.
Au cours des 16 jours de procès, un témoin d'une autre nature trônait sur la table des preuves.
The evidence was very important, and having the gloves sitting there as sort of a 13th juror was incredibly powerful for all of us.
The estimate was that they had removed, that the 1 ounce of padding that was gone was about 50% of the padding. These are the gloves that Collins was wearing that night, and the partially unstuffed glove that Resto was wearing.
In feeling the gloves, in sitting with the gloves, and living with the gloves while we deliberated, it was very meaningful. They took on a life of their own and sort of really became a compelling character in the room.
Mais l'endroit où les gants avaient été gardés après le combat ne jouait pas en faveur de l'accusation.
I gave him to Jackie Graham, I think, to keep overnight. And then we gave him back to Everlast for them to look at it to see what their opinion was.
It's my recollection that they were brought to the manufacturer for a period of time, that they may have even been placed in some trunk of somebody's car.
Un argument de poids pour la défense. N'importe qui avait pu modifier les gants après le combat.
They broke the chain of custody. From the time them gloves went to Everlast, I had no case.
The defense wasn't strong enough to really put across to the jury that this evidence was tainted enough for us to find them not guilty.
Des témoignages flous, des faits obscurs et un des témoins clés, l'homme de coin Artie Curley, mort 8 mois après le funeste combat. Malgré les doutes, Resto et Lewis furent déclarés coupables d'agression, de complot et de possession criminelle d'une arme mortelle, les gants trafiqués en l'occurrence. Panama fut en plus accusé d'avoir truqué une épreuve sportive. Resto fut condamné de 1 à 3 ans de prison et Panama de 2 à 6 ans de prison. Ils passèrent 2 ans et demi en prison. En 1988, après sa libération, Luis Resto retourna vivre dans le Bronx. Banni de la boxe, il avait perdu la seule chose qu'il connaissait. Quelques années plus tard, sa famille refusa de subir sa déchéance et elle le quitta. Luis perdit bientôt son logement. En 1994, il échoua ici, dans ce sous-sol froid et humide, décrépit et sans fenêtre de la salle de boxe du Morris Park, dans le Bronx.
Right there, that's Louis Resto, and this is our group from our gym.
We had him living in the gym because he was like more or less down and out because of being away.
That's when, Louis started hanging out more in the streets. He started drinking. He was partying in the streets.
I started doing drugs every day. I want to die, I don't care. Can't find no more.
He was out of work. He'd just come out of jail. He tried to get his pro boxing license back, and he was denied. So then I suggested he try for a cornerman's license. At least you work in the corner. You don't have to be the #1 cornerman. You can be an outside cornerman. They denied him that also.
Yeah, this is my room.
How long did you live here for?
10 years.
10 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
It took a lot away from him. It took his career. It took his pride. He felt responsible for something that he not just destroyed the kid, but he destroyed a family. He just never got over what had actually happened.
Where was your bed?
Right here, where you are. Right there. I used to hold my photo here, so I took everything. So I used to sleep right there in the bed.
He never dreamed that he was going to go to jail. And when he came out of jail, he was never the same.
When you were living here, did your wife ever stay here?
No. She was in Virginia, Seville. But she never stayed here, no.
Après avoir passé 10 ans dans ce sous-sol, Resto réussit à refaire suffisamment surface pour quitter la salle de boxe et s'installer avec sa sœur Martha et ses enfants dans le 2 pièces qu'elle occupait dans le Bronx.
Considering his size, you say he's not the same. He's so different. You know, he's not the same. For me, he's not the same. He's so lonely. He was more friendly and happy. Well, I don't see him happy anymore.
Baby boy.
He's your cousin? This is your son?
Baby boy.
This is your grandson?
This is my grandson, yeah.
And this
My
is...
baby boy.
That was your wife?
Mommy.
Luis Resto avait rencontré Maria Cookie Patia en 1974, après s'être installé dans son immeuble sur la 163e rue, dans le Bronx. Ils ont eu 2 garçons, Louis Jr. et Brian. Louis Jr. avait 5 ans et Brian était encore bébé quand leur père affronta Billy Collins Jr. en 1983. Ce combat bouleversa la vie de la famille. En 1994, Cookie quitta Louis et entama une toute nouvelle vie avec ses enfants en Virginie. C'est à la même époque que Louis commença son séjour de 10 ans dans le sous-sol de la salle de boxe du Morris Park. Après le départ de son épouse, Louis a rarement eu l'occasion de voir ses enfants. L'autocar mettait 7 heures pour se rendre en Virginie. 7 heures durant lesquelles Louis ressassait cette nuit maudite 25 ans auparavant.
You know, I think about that fight almost every day. When I work in the gym, I work with the other guy. I don't see your face, I see Colin's face.
So how do you feel? You feel excited about seeing the family?
Yeah, for the second time. For the second time, I see my 2 grandsons.
This is the second time you've ever seen your grandsons?
Yeah.
How does it make you feel to see them?
Feel good. I feel good, I'm a grandpa, you know.
Aujourd'hui, Louis Jr. a une trentaine d'années. Il a lui-même un fils. Brian aura bientôt 30 ans, il est marié et a 2 enfants.
Come on, fight.
Now, you grew up in the Bronx?
Yeah, I grew up in the Bronx.
That's cool.
Yeah, he came here when he was 10, 15.
No, I came here when I was... Before I was 21.
Oh yeah.
What kind of father is Louis?
He's okay. He's all right.
What kind of father was he? I really couldn't tell you. I really don't know my dad. Title dad, you can't tell that, loosely. For a long time, I hated my dad. I felt like, the boxing was first. My mom raised us,
Boxing will always be his greatest passion, no matter what. It will always be number 1 to Louis.
Would you say that he was a good father?
In reality, he didn't have a real father figure, so he did the best that he could.
Je réalise que Louis a eu très peu de contact avec ses fils, mais Louis Jr. et Brian défendent farouchement leur père quand on aborde le combat contre Billy Collins Jr.
I think it was kind of bullshit, because what they did, he got screwed because of that shit. If he knew the gloves ain't had no cushion, he would stop and tell the ref, yo, something's wrong with my gloves. I'm not gonna go on.
My father wouldn't think about taking padding out of a glove. I've seen this man jog 10 miles a day. shadow box in the dead heat with a sauna suit on.
Yeah, I'm gonna go down. You too? Huh?
If my dad didn't do it and he knows Panama did it, he should come out and say it. He should come out and say it because it's his last name, it's his legacy, it's his life, you know? He's, what is he, 50, 60 years old? I don't even know how old my father is, you know? I mean, it's his dream, and he lost it.
There you go, say cheese. We have an opportunity that we could bring you down to Florida to talk to Panama. Would you do it?
Hell yeah. You gotta tell me who did that. I don't want to live with this shit the rest of my life in my mind.
Quand je représentais des boxeurs, j'éprouvais toujours une certaine excitation à voyager avec l'un d'eux. J'étais tendu aussi à l'approche du combat. L'énergie nerveuse émanait d'un homme qui vivait de combats autorisés. Dans l'aéroport, une fois en compagnie de Luis Resto, j'éprouve le même sentiment. Luis Resto n'a pas revu Panama Lewis depuis leur emprisonnement en 1986. Maintenant, après plusieurs décennies, Luis se sent prêt à affronter l'entraîneur qui a sauvé sa carrière avant de la ruiner.
Hey, campeón! Venga para acá. Resto, that's the guy that's in the gym. Yeah. What's up, man? Oh, you lift your head up, man. You walk with your head down.
All right.
Sure.
Oh, shit. What's up, man?
Talk to me, man. You look good. You look good. My son. You all right?
Yeah, man.
Oh, the children.
Huh?
Oh, your children.
No, okay. I got 2, 3 grandsons.
All right. I can make you all the pads for this guy for me. You remember the old pads?
Yeah.
And if you do good, I supposed to get a world champion to train. I can't call on name now.
Yeah.
But once I get the job, then I'll bring you down to hold the pads. All right?
Yeah. But I want to ask you something, Papa. Yeah. I want to know who designed the glove.
Man, I want to know that too. You understand? That I want to know too. You follow me?
Yeah.
Okay, you see me here? I ain't making what I'm supposed to make. You follow me?
Yeah, I know.
And if I was to get my license back, you understand?
Yeah.
Things is going to be different. You understand? I do things for your children that you can do for your children. You understand? I feel it too, boss, man.
I've been with that shit for 24 years.
Me too. Me too, boss. Trust me. You're going to be all right. You understand? You're going to be all right. Because there's a God above.
Yeah.
I promise you. I do good, you be in. You hear me?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I hear you.
You know I love you from my heart, boss, man. Stay strong.
Try it, bro.
Huh? Stay strong, Wester. Stay strong. You're going to be all right. You're going to be all right. I'm hurting inside, too. You understand? Every day, this thing is in my mind, but there's nothing I can do.
I know. Everybody's talking shit, you know.
It's in the hands of God. Yeah. You understand? God looks over everybody. You understand?
Yeah, I know.
And I love you, and I promise you, I do good, I'm going to help you. You understand?
Yeah.
You've been there for me, I've been there for you. All right?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, boss man. Love you.
Yeah, I love you.
feel? I don't see him in a long time. I get emotional when I see him cry. You understand? Because I cry on the inside. But I know what he's been through. Because you don't put a person in prison and take away their livelihood too. That's a double whammy. You know what I'm saying? People do things in the street, they do their time, they come out, and they go back to what they was doing before. So why do this to us? You understand? And they still don't know what went down with the glove. I want to know, he want to know.
What I want to talk about is how are we going to find out the truth?
Only God knows.
Do you think that only God knows? Nobody else knows?
Until this day, nobody know what took place with them gloves. Until this day. Like I told him before, I missed him like I missed one of my children. And one day, hopefully, the truth will come out. More, against the rope. Go! Bang! Try again, get off your heels. Against the rope. Bang! Bang!
Quelques semaines après la visite en Floride, je rencontre Panama, à New York, lors de la pesée de Zab Judah et de Miguel Cotto avant leur combat au Madison Square Garden. Panama a joui encore d'une certaine notoriété. Il a préparé Judah pour ravir un titre majeur. Son exclusion à vie l'empêche seulement d'officier dans le coin lors des combats.
The amount of fighters I will have, good fighters, they don't come to me because I can't work the corner. Not a matter of a license, is that I can't work the corner.
I told Shannon he should have hired you when those rats ran out on him.
Yeah. I get more calls now than a man that have a license.
Are you gonna be in the dressing room tomorrow?
No. I don't go where I don't belong. You know what I mean? Yes, sir. What's up, my brother?
This the Rand main man here. This is the teacher right here from
Okay, one love.
Seattle. I wanted to meet you.
Okay, pleased to meet you. It's an honor and pleasure. Yeah, man, so dressing room I never go. I don't do nothing to stop my comeback.
Panama a exigé d'être payé pour chacune de mes interviews. Lors de la pesée au Madison Square Garden et le soir suivant, lors de notre rencontre à son hôtel avant le combat.
So you're definitely not going to go to the fight?
No, because I could watch it better by Mario. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You ready to roll?
You want to go?
Yeah, let's roll. Don't, anybody asks you if I'm in the ring, you tell them yes.
No, I won't.
No, if they ask you if you see me in the arena, just say yes, I don't want people to know where I'm at,
Oh, okay.
And,
it's almost 24 years to the day.
Yeah.
When you think about it.
I try not to think about it.
I know.
Don't get me nowhere like this, Mr. Mario.
Fight time. Why would Panama Lewis do something like that on a wrestle and Billy Collins fight? I just don't think that he would do something like that. I would never in a million years think that something, you're not going to jeopardize your whole career. I can see like in a major fight if somebody tried to do something, but it wasn't the magnitude of Duran and Sugar Ray Leonard. I mean, Panama was in the corner for Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard the first time when Duran won the fight,
But do this in dog shit. You know what I mean?
Nino Gonzalez est également venu chez Mario pour suivre le combat. Ce boxeur à la retraite est l'un des adversaires qui ont battu Resto sur le ring. Luis me dit qu'il considère Nino comme un ami. La conversation entre Panama et Nino concernant la visite de Luis en Floride prend soudain un autre relief.
He came to Miami, yeah, because they brought him down. They brought him down. But I didn't like his approach, but I got to make him understand you got to go on with your life. And I will help you while I can. You know, when you call me, he's crying and look at me, head down. I said, what happened, man? He said, I want you to tell me who fucked them gloves up. I said, look here, man. Listen. I said, look, man, you asking me a crazy question. It's good, but you don't think if I knew who did it, I would tell you, and I wouldn't look over myself? I said, you went to jail, I went to jail. But you got to get over the shit. Use the jab, baby, take the jab. That's it, long distance. Yeah, long distance, baby. There you go, long distance. 1, 2. You need to be there for that.
Judah, le boxeur de Panama, perd le combat. Mais il semble clair que sur l'autre rive de l'Hudson, face au Madison Square Garden, ou dans un hôtel 5 étoiles du centre-ville, Panama Lewis vit très bien du sport dont il a soi-disant été banni à vie.
On this St. Patrick's Day, the story of Irish Billy Collins, the case of the tampered boxing gloves. It's a true story involving indictments, district attorneys, defense lawyers, and death.
En 1985, le journaliste sportif Len Berman interviewait Lewis au sujet d'une conversation qu'il aurait eue avec un policier en civil qui enquêtait sur l'incident qui avait eu lieu sur le ring 2 ans auparavant.
The district attorney says that you told them that Panama Lewis and some guys took the gloves into the bathroom before they put them on you.
The what?
They say that you told them that they took your gloves and they went to the bathroom.
No, they said that. I didn't say nothing.
They said you said it.
They said that I said.
You didn't say that?
I didn't say nothing.
Mais cette conversation a bien eu lieu. 2 décennies plus tard, je retrouve à Miami un des policiers qui a travaillé sur ce dossier et qui a parlé à Resto.
Me and other detectives and the district attorney, we came up with a scenario where I would, since at that time I was into running, and I would put on my running clothes and a wire, a Nagra, a concealed device, and I would go to the Bronx knowing that he trained in a certain area, and we would, the plan at the time I think was that I would run with him, and you know, as a fan, and get him involved in a conversation where he would discuss it, and we could find out who, in fact, removed the wadding from inside the glove. He admitted to me, yes, it happened, but it wasn't him.
Le policier me confirme donc que le soir du combat, Lewis savait que ses gants étaient trafiqués. Mais l'enregistrement de sa confession avait été jugé irrecevable lors du procès en 1986. Personne ne l'avait jamais entendu. Après des mois de fouilles dans des dossiers, je trouve enfin la transcription de cette conversation. Lewis m'a menti. Je décide de le confronter à son mensonge hors du logement de sa sœur.
We have the transcripts here from you talking. Yeah. We have the tape recorders from the DA's office. It talks about exactly what happened, the truth.
Yeah.
Now, I know that it's been difficult, Louis. You've got nothing to lose, and only to win. People will support you.
Yeah, you're right. I tell them,
You said Panama Lewis took the gloves into the room, the bathroom. You said, and Panama, says the detective? And you said yes.
Yeah.
I need you to say it. It's okay, Louis.
I'll do it. There's something there.
Who took the gloves?
Panama. Panama took the glove. And he was in the bathroom where the thing was Billy Black. We hang together all the time. Now I remember. That's a long time ago, 1983, you know. I gotta recall it.
And when he came, and when you asked him, why did you take the gloves? What are you doing with the gloves? What did he say?
Oh yeah, I said, Panama, what are you doing with my glove? That's okay, don't worry. That's it. And he told me why he was doing to the glove.
You knew something was going on, though. It's okay. I think the most important thing is that you come clean, like you are now. You got nothing to hide. There's nobody to protect. Now it's about yourself and living the rest of your life free of this. And when we go down to Nashville, it's gonna help.
Yeah, you're right.
So next week, Monday, Tuesday, maybe we go?
Where?
We go down to Nashville. You fly down there.
I don't know. I want to see the family, you know. I want to get that thing in my mind. Always thinking about that. Always. Right now, too. Be thinking about it for every day. Every fucking day. That the movie said. That the movie said, I can be a champion. Gonna be a world champion.
He never admitted to me that he knew from the get-go or that he was part of the conspiracy. I never got that out of him. He always went on the defensive saying, no, Panama Lewis did it, Lee Black did it, these other Puerto Ricans did it, and I was literally a victim.
On passe la journée à tourner dans le Bronx en voiture. Louis parle sans s'arrêter.
That's when I figured out something wrong with the glove inside. When they told me, just keep punching.
Is this when you're in the corner?
Yeah. They keep punching. That's when I started hitting the thing. I forgot about the body.
At this point, this is the question that I asked him, why didn't you stop? Why didn't you say, look, there's a problem with the gloves? He says, we don't do that. Boxers don't do that. You listen to your manager, your trainer. That's the people that you listen to. Here I have a shot at a title. I'm not gonna jeopardize that by opening my mouth and saying that something is wrong with the gloves. I'm gonna go along with the program.
Louis me parle aussi des cachets que Panama mélangeait dans les bouteilles d'eau de ses boxeurs. Il révèle ainsi un autre aspect illégal de son combat contre Collins et rend plausible les soupçons qui pesaient sur le combat d'Aaron Pryor qui avait eu lieu en 1982.
I drink that.
You drink the water?
In the Billy fight. In the Billy Gunn fight.
Oh, really?
When you tired, man. When you tired, drink that. Your lung open. I said, oh shit, I feel good.
What is it?
You know, people when they got asthma, you got a pill, put them in the water.
Louis semble soulagé d'avoir été forcé de révéler la vérité. Cela faisait plus de 20 ans qu'il niait tout en bloc. Peut-être parce qu'il espérait récupérer un jour sa licence de boxeur. Peut-être par crainte des représailles. Peut-être aussi parce qu'il avait pris l'habitude de mentir sur cette affaire. Maintenant que la vérité était dite, il décide de se rendre dans l'État du Tennessee pour demander pardon.
Hi, Mr. Collins. This is Eric Drath. Just wanted to let you know that, as I had mentioned on the phone a couple days ago, we're in Nashville and we're planning on stopping by. I look forward to seeing you very soon. What did you want to get out of this?
Well, I want to say that I'm sorry about what happened. Sorry that I didn't start the fight. I'm sorry that I wear the glove. And I didn't know that was going to happen like that. But I'm sorry, you know. That's how I feel.
Mr. Collins? We wanted to see, is Mr. Collins here? We'd like to talk to him.
De toutes les personnes touchées par l'issue de ce combat, la famille de Billy Collins a le plus souffert. Et la mort de Billy Jr. n'a pas été leur seule perte.
Billy Collins Sr. wanted to sue everybody in existence. He wanted to sue the promoter Top Rank. He wanted to sue Madison Square Garden. He wanted to sue the cornermen, Panama, Pedro. He wanted to sue Louis, Artie Curley. He just wanted to sue. He wanted to sue the New York State Athletic Commission. That was his final, I believe that was his final lawsuit.
The person that was as guilty as anybody was the commission inspector in the room.
Inspectors should be in the dressing room, checking the taping and the gloving of all fighters.
As far as I learned, and with my vision to the dressing rooms and this, they go in the dressing room and they were doing nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Our inspector was in the locker room at that time and told them to glove up. They asked him for 15 more minutes, and he went out to see his superior to ask if 15 more minutes would be allowed. When he came back in the room, they had gloved up.
Why didn't these inspectors, where were they? One left, then another one came back, then another one left, and no one is there?
Comme les uppercuts de Billy ne les sortiraient jamais de la pauvreté, la famille Collins compta sur la justice pour y parvenir. Ce qui soulève une question. Si Billy n'a plus boxé, était-ce pour éviter de devenir aveugle ou pour ne pas compromettre les indemnités colossales qu'un tribunal pouvait accorder?
There's no way to tell whether he never fought again because he was aware of his injuries, whether he was afraid of additional injuries, or he was being led down the path with the dreams of a pot of gold at the other end in suing people with deeper pockets. But I'll bet he could have fought again.
The father was so inconsolable that he wasn't listening to anything. But we did offer Billy Collins fights.
Billy was offered fights, but his father did not want him to fight because he was afraid he would lose the lawsuit. When his dad was on him, the lawsuit. So he just sat back and did as his dad told him to do.
I don't know whether that's true or not, that they turned down the fights because they figured they'd make more money in the lawsuit. If that's the case, it's pathetic.
Well, we're dealing with mighty powerful people. We just have to wait and see how the justice system in this country really works.
En plus de 10 ans de bataille juridique, les Collins n'ont jamais obtenu le moindre dollar. En 1994, le dernier procès intenté contre la commission de boxe de l'État de New York est rejeté par le juge, car le jury estime que les règles qui définissent la responsabilité de la commission sont trop vagues pour prendre une décision.
We're calling the police if you don't leave.
À 1 kilomètre de la maison des Collins, nous nous rendons à l'endroit où Billy Collins a trouvé la mort.
Down into there.
So, yeah, huh? Hey, man.
Une heure plus tard, Louis me révèle que l'histoire va plus loin qu'il ne l'a avoué. La tricherie ne s'était pas limitée au traficotage des gants et aux liquides dopants.
What did Panama do?
You know the thing that you put when you break your arm, the cast? A little thing like that. Put water and put it and then put the hanger.
The night of the fight.
Yeah.
So you couldn't open your hands?
Only for a little bit, and then when they get dry, that's it, like that. Can we go like that? Can we go like that?
So you basically had plaster.
Yeah. There was a lot of money involved there.
Who?
A lot of money and bet money.
How much?
I don't know.
How do you know?
Because they were talking about that bet money
Where were they talking about it?
in the room.
At the dressing room?
Dressing room. They want to do something, put in my hand, take the pad, that's it. I said, the guy more stronger than me. The people were saying he gonna knock me out. I said, never gonna happen.
Can you, the fact that he took all that hitting is pretty, you didn't expect him, you thought he was gonna go down.
When I saw him getting big, I just kept hitting in the face. I forgot about the body. Because I'm a body fighter. For that day, the actual body shot, I didn't throw too many. Only here. Like I want to destroy him.
You wanted what?
Destroy him. I shouldn't wear the glove, man. Well, see you, Billy. Sorry. See you.
Étape suivante, la maison de la veuve de Billy Collins.
Well, I'm glad you came. And I know it took a lot for you to come.
You go on with your life here. You hold your head up. Hold your head up.
You stop carrying everybody else's guilt.
Okay, hold your head up. You're a good man.
I mean, he did it, and it was wrong, but there's other people who are responsible. There's others that have been convicted, and they're actually the ones I want brought to justice.
Le 11 juin 2007, alors qu'il fête ses 52 ans, Louis décide de poursuivre son expiation en rendant visite à sa mère dans le Massachusetts.
Hello.
¿Qué, Luis? ¿Y qué loco? Damn, you look the same.
¿Verdad? Se ve mejor.
Seguro más joven.
Yeah, te veía más viejo la vez que yo te vi. Mira, tiene esta cana en la ceja.
Mira los moños.
Today is 52.
Yeah, today's your birthday,
Happy birthday to you.
Damn, those you skinny, bro. And I found these down there.
Oh, shit.
And this I got from the
You know
internet.
this guy here?
Where is it? Sí, que yo le dije que no-
Tony Dancer.
Yeah, I wanted to send him a copy.
Oh, shit, that's in Guyana. Yo hice, ya se jodió.
I think he got screwed. He, every time I watch the Rocky movie, it reminds me of him. At the end when he was broke with nothing.
¿Cuándo empezaste? Ah, sí.
That's Pajalis, 1979. That was the best.
Sa famille ne connaît pas la vérité et continue de prendre sa défense.
Like she says, he was a great fighter and he deserves something. And he, like she, you know, like we say, he has nothing to show for all the work he's gone through. For all those scars and all those stitches, what does he have to show for it? Nothing. Which I don't think that's right. See, she says she feels angry because she feels he was innocent.
Y nosotros venimos a saber eso cuando a él lo sentenciaron, porque cuestión de, en el tiempo que él estuvo en juicio nunca nos dijo nada.
And she says all she knew was that he was going to jail, and she didn't know why, because no one ever told her, oh, this is what's happening.
Quelques minutes plus tard, Luis avoue la vérité à sa mère et à sa sœur. Il savait qu'il trichait ce soir-là, sur le ring.
Los otros lo siguen negando. So él llega a ser el mejor hombre, porque él está aceptando lo que él vio.
I don't think it was fair. I mean, yeah, if he, like I said, if he had blame in it, well, you know, he was sentenced and he did his time. I don't think he should pay for the rest of his life. It's not fair. You know, he amounted to nothing. That's how I see it. He amounted to nothing. And so much sacrifice from a teenager to now, and that's all he thinks about. And that's all he, you know, that's his life. And it was taken away from him, and I don't think that's right. He did his time, and that should have been enough. And if he had part in it, he paid the price. And he shouldn't keep paying for the rest of his life. It's not fair. There's no justice in that. That's not justice.
Louise décide ensuite de retourner en Virginie pour voir Cookie et ses fils.
¿Quieres que te diga todo lo que pasó? The fight. They went to the bathroom.
Okay.
But you know,
What do you think you should do about telling your sons?
Just come out and say it like you told me.
I saw Panama going to the bathroom.
Yeah.
But I didn't think about that, you know.
You didn't know they was gonna do that, did you?
No, they went to the bathroom with a girl.
See?
I saw him.
Oh, you might see him, but you didn't know what he really was doing, see?
I didn't know that was gonna happen like this way. The way Future, they died.
Right, nobody knew he was gonna do that.
Yeah,
so that's not really your fault.
Drinking.
It's not really your fault. That's on him. He don't do it to
No,
himself.
but you know, he did that because of the fight.
Nah, but you wasn't even thinking about all that, I bet you. Just ready to go in the ring and go.
Está loco.
Pour finir, il rend visite à Brian, qui est en ville, où il construit un restaurant qu'il espère ouvrir bientôt.
42-inch plasmas going up. All across the wall, all the front bar.
Oh, you sent that?
Yeah, he's 1,000.
Oh, good.
Yeah, go ahead, come back.
happened, at least more. ¿Qué le queda? Diga lo que pasó.
¿Qué pasó con qué?
My last fight, I knew what would happen in that fight. I saw people going to the bathroom, Panama. But I didn't know. I said, I didn't know that was going to happen like that. Then I said, I seen wear the glove that day.
So you knew he took it out of the gloves?
I knew something happened, but I didn't feel nothing. But I know something happened.
I guess I kind of felt, he felt sorry and he had all this guilt build up and I had all this anger build up and guilt. It's kind of like, I don't know, I kind of feel free myself. I kind of feel like, well, I'm not cursed. It was just, he messed up. I hope you can let that fight go, man, and just move on. That's what I care about, you know? I love you. You know, we all love you. I don't give a shit, man. I just want a father. I just want my kids to have a grandfather. I just want to go past it, and the rest of last name is gonna come up.
Il reste une personne que Louis tient à affronter une dernière fois.
Cookie, it's me, Louis. So I'm in Miami. I want to talk to Panama to see what he said. But he's going to say, I didn't do nothing. I'm going to tell you a lie.
Hello.
How you doing?
Everything good?
Good, good. Can we put a mic on you?
Yeah, what what's going on?
Well, we wanted to, you know, continue our dialogue. We're still shooting the movie and figured we'd talk to you again.
The first time when I came here, like the cat ate my tongue. I don't hear shit. But I don't feel that way. I don't feel the same now.
One of the other things, though, that I gotta tell you is that Resto has actually told us some information that I wanted to confirm with you. And that's why maybe...
What kind of information did you give?
Well, he told us that he saw you go in the bathroom and do it.
He saw me? In the bathroom?
Yeah.
So I wanted to take a piss.
I know. But
you didn't see me messing no glove?
That's what he says.
What?
He says that he did see it.
Did you see me?
Yes.
Oh, I know who did that. Why did that?
Here's Mario.
Why I did what? You see me taking no pie on the glove? Did you see me doing that? Did you see me?
I saw you go to the bathroom.
I went to the bathroom. That don't mean I take a pie on the glove.
Lee Black.
Lee Black was what you want to say.
Hey, you can take this fucking bullshit out of my gym, first of all.
Tell us what you said.
Yeah, he went to the bathroom.
And what about when he put on the glove?
The cast.
What?
He says that you put cast on his knuckles.
Cast on his knuckles? I didn't rub his hand. All the colors you rub his hand. I didn't do nothing to this man's hand.
Who put the cast on?
I did nothing to this gentleman's hand. I didn't rub his hand.
You put the hanger too.
What?
Kelly put the other one.
I didn't put nothing on you. I didn't rub your hands. I didn't touch your hands. How could you say that, Resto? I did not rub your hand. I didn't call you rub your hand. That's why I keep telling you, if Artie was alive today, I wouldn't have been in this. I told you this a million times. I didn't rub his hands. I did not rub his hands. So who could he say that?
Artie Kelly, he came late. He came later on.
I did not rub your hands. Don't stand up here and lie like that to me, man. I did not put the wraps in your hand. All they call it, both wraps in your hand.
Louis told us it was about in the water bottle, that there was a little pill used that you crush up for antihistamine.
No. I didn't put nothing up inside the bottle. Where all of this comes from? I don't put no pill in no bottle. I did none of those things. Hey, Resto, look at me, man. Please, look at me. Look at my face to face.
Take the
All
glass.
right. You think I didn't, you think, right? Look at me, Resto, look at me.
Take the glass up.
I look
Take
in
it
Danny
out.
eyes. In the same way, look at me. How could you say I wrap your hands? I put tape in your hand. I didn't even put on your gloves.
Yeah. So
You know, I took in as a son. Am I right or wrong?
I will look too low like my father. Look what you did to me.
I did nothing to you, son, but bring you back the right way.
Who did it?
I don't know. This is the honest truth I'm telling you.
Yeah. Blew my career.
Blew your career?
Yeah.
And what about my career?
I was the fighter. You don't need a training.
Yeah, I was one of the best out there.
I know.
Okay then.
You want the best training.
All right then.
Can't say nothing against that.
I got my record to prove that. I got to go, Champagne. I got to go and do my work.
All right. See you.
Give Daddy a hug, man. What? But I ain't give you a hug. Come. I have a safe trip back. You understand?
Yeah.
And like I said, when I get myself right with a good fighter and I make money, I take care of you. Not because of boxing.
Yeah.
It's because I love you as a son. That's why I train you from the first start.
Yeah.
When everybody think you finished, who brought you back?
Yeah, you brought me back.
Thank you. He's a good fighter. Just need better training. Need a teacher. And that's what I did.
I still think about that every time. I don't want to forget. I'm going to stay in my heart for life. Not like before, walking like that. You know, I'm going to walk with my head up. But I'm still going to be thinking about Billy Cannon.
En 2008, le restaurant de Brian Resto en Virginie ouvre ses portes. L'inauguration est gratifiée d'une visite surprise.
Oh! What are you doing here? What's up, man? It's open. See that? That's pretty good.
You're gonna move down here and you're gonna get old and you're gonna watch Brian, Isaiah, and Dominic get older and you're gonna train them and things are gonna be different.
La première fois que j'ai rencontré Luis Resto, je l'ai cru quand il m'a dit qu'il était innocent. J'ai eu envie de tourner un documentaire pour lui rendre justice. Au lieu de ça, j'ai prouvé sa culpabilité et je l'ai entraîné dans un périple ponctué de confessions et de confrontations très tardives, douloureuses, mais gratifiantes. Quand ils perdent un combat, les boxeurs espèrent toujours avoir une seconde chance. Billy Collins Jr. n'a jamais eu cette seconde chance. Et après un très long périple, Luis Resto a finalement eu la sienne. Nous ne saurons sans doute jamais ce qui s'est réellement passé dans les vestiaires ce funeste soir à New York. Nous ne saurons sans doute jamais qui a fait quoi, ni pour quelle raison. Le mystère demeure. Mais aujourd'hui, la démarche de boxeur de Luis semble soulagée d'un poids et porteuse d'espoir. Il est toujours hanté par une erreur qu'il ne pourra jamais effacer. Mais il n'est plus accablé par une vérité qu'il a si longtemps refoulée. Depuis qu'il l'a dite, il se sent libéré.
Mr. Collins? Mr. Collins? Mr. Collins? Mr. Collins, I have new information for you. Mr. Collins, I have new information in the case.
25 years ago this June, a criminal boxing match took place at Madison Square Garden. It turns out it was more than just lack of padding in Resto's gloves.
Not only was the padding tampered with during the fight against Billy Collins Jr., but plaster was used on the knuckles in the wrapping.
The Collins family today filed a lawsuit against the state of New York Boxing Commission for negligence. It's a 25-year-old tragedy that isn't over yet.
Et voilà donc pour ce documentaire pour le moins étonnant. Tout de suite, je vous l'avais annoncé en début d'émission, il est là, on le remercie, Jean-Philippe Chustic. Bonjour, merci beaucoup d'avoir accepté notre invitation. Pour parler de boxe, on ne pouvait pas ne pas faire appel à vous, docteur S-Box s'il en est. Votre regard sur cette incroyable histoire, c'est tragique.
Ouais, c'est tragique, c'est époustouflant parce qu'on se souvient de ce qui s'était passé. Mais jamais on a su qu'il y avait une sorte d'enquête qui a été réalisée. Et la force, je pense, du réalisateur qui a écrit ça, c'est qu'il connaissait bien l'univers de la boxe et le milieu de la boxe. Donc c'est pour ça qu'il réussit à avoir cette complicité avec Luis Resto. C'est un ancien agent de boxe, il est très proche d'eux, donc il connaît cet univers, il connaît la sensibilité. C'est pour ça qu'il a ce rapport. S'il n'a pas ce rapport avec lui, il ne peut pas obtenir ce qu'il a.
Rien.
Mais c'est époustouflant. J'ai été...
Alors, moi, j'ai une première question. Comment, avant le combat, on ne s'aperçoit pas que ces gants ont été trafiqués? Est-ce que c'est possible?
Je pense que dans le contexte de l'époque...
c'est possible, oui, mais...
Oui, la réalité montre que c'est possible.
Ouais.
Alors, on est en 83, on est en juin 83. Remettons dans le contexte. Le match se déroule le 16 juin 83. On est au Madison Square Garden à New York, dans la Mecque de la boxe. Ce soir-là, le match principal, c'est Duran-Davemour. C'est un combat extraordinaire. Toute l'attention est concentrée sur cet événement. Le match entre Collins et Luis Resto, c'est un combat d'encadrement. Un undercard de qualité, certes, parce que Billy Collins, c'est un grand espoir irlandais, avec une belle histoire, contre un journeyman, ce qu'on appelle. Luis Resto, avec son palmarès de 8 défaites et 18 victoires, c'est ce qu'on appelle un journeyman, donc un boxeur qui est largement à son niveau. Donc il n'y a pas la même attention sur ce combat-là. Il y a une erreur de la commission de New York, qui théoriquement, lorsqu'on est dans les vestiaires, les commissionnaires sont là, des officiels doivent être présents au moment de la préparation des gants. On ne lâche pas les boxeurs, et ce, théoriquement, quels que soient les niveaux.
Le niveau du combat.
Le niveau du combat. Ils allaient dans un coin trafiquer des gants, mais ce n'est plus possible aujourd'hui. Donc il y a, et c'est incontestable, il y a de la part des officiels de la commission de New York, donc il y a un manque de professionnalisme. Voilà. Mais je pense que l'attention est particulièrement, justement, concentrée sur le gros combat. Donc on ne fait pas tellement attention. Et puis, honnêtement, qui va imaginer qu'on puisse trafiquer les gants
dans un environnement comme celui-là.
Et en faire des morceaux de pierre, c'est ça. Le drame, il est là.
Autre question, comment, quand on voit Collins, au bout d'un moment, il est défiguré déjà, il est ouvert de partout, il est gonflé de partout, personne n'arrête le combat. Pas l'arbitre, pas son clan, pas son coin, c'est son père qui l'entraîne, personne ne dit rien, les soigneurs, on laisse aller jusqu'au bout, on le laisse se faire démonter.
Alors, il y a donc deux erreurs. Un, celle de Tony Perez, c'est l'arbitre. Tony Perez, il n'est pas forcément le plus lucide pour se rendre compte de la gravité de la situation. On est en 83, on a tendance, dans les années 80 encore, à ne pas arrêter les combats suffisamment tôt. Le contexte. Ensuite, c'est le favori. C'est un boxeur de 21 ans qui est un grand espoir. On va donc tenter de le privilégier. Et de l'arrêter est humiliant, alors qu'on peut considérer, grâce à son punch, puisqu'il a 11 KO en 14 victoires, qu'il peut encore inverser la tendance. Donc il y a ce premier élément-là. L'arbitre a les yeux concentrés sur Resto et va être très tolérant avec ce qui se passe en disant « Bon, il est peut-être abîmé, mais finalement, il a encore sa chance. » Et puis il y a le papa. Alors il y a deux types d'interprétations qu'on peut avoir avec un père dans un coin, où le père et c'est ce qui arrive le plus souvent, fort heureusement, a une telle sensibilité, un tel amour pour son fils, bien que l'amour rende aveugle, c'est qu'elle le dire dans ce contexte-là, il le protège. Et aussitôt, il va jeter l'éponge. Il se dit, je vais protéger la vie de mon fils, la santé, parce qu'il est jeune, c'est un espoir, et puis il peut encore poursuivre sa carrière. Il y a cet élément-là, et c'est le plus souvent qu'on retrouve dans la relation père-fils. Et il y a l'autre extrême. Le père qui est un dur, qui a été boxeur, le père.
Qui a été boxeur.
Il a été boxeur pro, il a une super carrière amateur. Et lui, au contraire, il pense, connaissant les capacités de son fils, qu'il peut réagir et il ne voit pas la gravité de la situation. Là aussi, il est aveuglé, quelque part. Donc il va laisser se poursuivre. Donc c'est ça le drame. Et je pense que le père, avec le recul, peut autant s'en vouloir. C'est évident.
On le sent là quand on voit le Resto qui va il habite dans une cabane au fin fond de nulle part. On sent que ça fait quelques années qu'il rumine ça, quoi. Il doit se le refaire toutes les nuits, le combat.
Et donc finalement, il n'y a que deux personnes, il faut le savoir, dans un match qui peuvent arrêter le combat. L'arbitre ou le médecin, mais qui monte sur le ring à la demande de l'arbitre, donc c'est pas le cas, ou l'homme de coin, le chef de coin, en l'occurrence son père. Et il ne le fait pas.
Dans l'autre coin, Panama Lewis, le sulfureux Panama Lewis.
C'est moins qu'on puisse dire.
Qu'en était, qui avait déjà une réputation un peu douteuse, on va dire. C'est pareil, comment un type comme lui peut exercer encore.
Là, il détourne la loi. C'est-à-dire qu'il n'a plus sa licence pour être dans l'enceinte d'un combat. Donc il n'a plus la possibilité d'être autour du ring et d'être l'un des hommes de coin. Mais on ne lui interdit pas la possibilité d'être dans une salle, en train de donner la leçon et de conseiller des boxeurs. C'est le paradoxe. Donc il n'est pas interdit de cela. Il mériterait d'être banni à vie. Puis je pense que le doc, qui est magnifique, démontre à quel point c'est un sale bonhomme. C'est terrible.
Il y a d'autres personnages, comme Panama Lewis, qui vous viennent en tête, comme ça. Moi, même si c'est pas pareil, mais Don King, c'est l'image qui vient avec, pareil, ses bagues, ses bijoux.
Il en a moins de bijoux.
Ouais,
il n'a pas les mêmes lunettes, il a moins de bijoux, et il est moins... Non.
Mais dans le côté comme ça, excentrique, en termes de
excentrique, il y a beaucoup de blacks américains qui aiment ce paraître-là, ce côté-là délirant qu'on ne voit pas en France ou en Europe. Ça, c'est une chose. Maintenant, Panama Lewis, c'est vraiment la caricature. C'est la caricature de ce qui s'est passé à un moment donné dans l'histoire de la boxe. C'est-à-dire que des matchs truqués, ou des combines de gants, ou de bandages durs, etc., il y en a toujours eu, mais en remontant longtemps dans l'histoire, très loin. Dans les années 20, dans les années 40, lorsque la mafia était aux mains de certains boxeurs. Il y avait des arrangements. Donc il y avait des choses comme ça. Mais elle est codifiée aujourd'hui. On protège avant tout la santé des boxeurs. Tout est réglementé. Donc d'ailleurs, ce cas de 83 est le dernier en date. On n'a plus eu ces extrêmes-là.
Il n'y a pas eu une histoire de bandage récemment avec Margarito?
Ouais, voilà, le bandage dur
Bandage un peu dur.
Bon, mais il n'y a pas eu de conséquences. Donc on a enterré l'affaire, entre guillemets. Il y a... il peut très bien y avoir en athlétisme, on se souvient à un moment donné, il y avait une histoire de chaussures sur le saut à hauteur où il avait trouvé une semelle un peu plus épaisse pour rebondir. Donc il y aura toujours des borderlines et on va sortir de cela. Mais c'est rare.
Bon, c'est vrai qu'il a été suspendu 1 an, il a payé, mais ça peut encore malgré tout arriver. Vous avez, je disais, vous êtes une encyclopédie de la boxe, d'autres exemples comme ça de combats dans le temps, qui ont marqué comme ça par leur côté scandaleux, arrangé
Non, quand je revois le comportement de l'arbitre qui n'est pas bon, l'histoire est marquée très souvent par, malheureusement, des arbitres qui n'ont pas été à la hauteur ou qui ont manqué de lucidité à un moment donné. Très souvent, lorsque les matchs se terminent de manière dramatique, c'est donc que malheureusement, ils ont pris beaucoup de coups et qu'il n'y a pas eu un arrêt suffisamment tôt. Un autre exemple douloureux, Nigel Benn a rencontré à l'époque Gerald McClellan. On est en 1994, dans un championnat du monde des moyens qui a marqué l'histoire. On est en Angleterre, 2 destroyers, 2 destructeurs d'une violence inouïe s'affrontent l'un contre l'autre. À tour de rôle, ils vont aller au tapis. Et malheureusement, Gerald McClellan, il est déclaré KO. Mais à la suite de ça, il est aujourd'hui aveugle, sourd à 80% et sur une chaise roulante. Donc c'est l'extrême. Mais le match est allé tellement loin dans la souffrance, dans la violence.
Alors, moi, si vous voulez bien, comme on est revenu un petit peu sur Resto, Panama Lewis et tout ça, j'aimerais bien qu'on revoie un extrait. On a choisi la fin du combat, ce qui se passe sur le ring, et puis je vais vous demander le regard que vous portez là-dessus.
Resto, le portoricain du Bronx, aux statistiques médiocres, venait de démolir le Golden Boy irlandais, invaincu jusque-là. Soudain, comme ça arrive à l'occasion dans la boxe, le combat connut un tout autre épilogue.
When Resto crosses the ring and gives Colin the Judas kiss, as he's turning away, you can see Billy Ray's father's hand.
I don't think Billy Collins Sr., from what he told me, even thought that there might have been something wrong with the gloves until the very end of the fight. Otherwise, he would have pointed it out. It was at the end of the fight, when Resto went over to congratulate him, that he grabbed onto the gloves and held on, and he started screaming for the inspectors, these gloves, these gloves.
Je vous dis ce que je vois, vous me dites si... je vois Resto qui va s'excuser presque auprès de Billy Collins, genre désolé, hein, et qui après, sur son dernier regard, se tourne vers son coin en disant putain, ils m'ont chopé là, ils m'ont chopé, ils me tiennent sur les gants, comme s'il était au courant et qu'il appelait son coin à la rescousse, non?
Je pense d'abord que quand il va le voir, c'est uniquement spontané, c'est sincère. Et ça, c'est très souvent le cas.
De boxeur à boxeur.
Mais vraiment, c'est deux hommes.
Ouais.
Et il a mal pour lui. Et ça se vérifie dans tous les cas.
Ouais.
Le vainqueur va voir le vaincu, il l'a vu souffrir, il l'a fait souffrir, il va le voir, il dit des petites choses intimes, il l'embrasse, ça se voit, c'est très touchant, et c'est vrai, c'est authentique. Après, c'est le père qui lui prend la main pour un peu le féliciter, en clair. Voilà. Et là, en lui prenant la main, il lui serre la main. Et là, l'autre, il hurle de douleur parce qu'il n'a plus de protection, et on ne sait pas dans quel état était sa main à la fin du combat. Et donc, il se tourne là, est-ce qu'il dit « on m'a démasqué », etc. Je sais pas, Xavier, je pense pas. Je pense que simplement là, peut-être qu'il réalise que finalement...
Qu'il réalise qu'il s'est fait avoir. Que lui-même, non.
Ouais. C'est pas impossible.
Il le sent pas, qu'il n'y a rien, il n'y a plus de protection, au moment où il met les coups. Il se doute bien de quelque chose. Justement, sur l'état de sa main, il doit bien se dire, tiens, ça tape pas comme d'habitude, ça fait mal.
Je suis partagé. Je me demande...
je ne vous demande pas de trancher. Hein,
non, mais c'est intéressant. Je pense, moi, il est complice. Voilà. Ce qui ressort de ce doc, après, c'est intéressant, chacun fait son interprétation.
Oui, bien sûr.
Il est complice. Et pourquoi il est martyrisé? Parce que beaucoup de boxeurs n'ont jamais été traumatisés par une victoire, par un KO, et qu'ensuite, leur adversaire s'est foutu en l'air. Est mort par accident ou s'est suicidé. Ça ne les traumatise pas de la même façon. Là, il est complice parce qu'il lui a fait mal et qu'il sait ce qui s'est passé. Et finalement, il le traîne pendant 25 ans. Puisqu'il l'avoue à la fin du film. Je les ai vus faire. Et il se doute, en mettant ses gants, parce qu'il a à l'époque 28 ans, il se doute qu'il y a quelque chose d'anormal. Et il sait de toute façon qu'il n'a peut-être pas les gants qu'il a habituellement.
Pour terminer, là on vient de parler du monde de la boxe professionnelle.
Qui n'est pas toujours noir, hein, parce que là on a un truc noir.
Non, bien sûr, non, qui n'est pas toujours noir, au contraire, le noble art, hein, parce qu'on sait que voilà, il y a une grande noblesse dans. Il y a, bien sûr, comme dans tous les sports, on l'a dit tout à l'heure, voilà, des gens moins bien que d'autres. La boxe au JO, on entend souvent parler aussi de. Pas de combat arrangé, mais de décisions qui sont prises, qui prêtent à discussion. Comment on peut expliquer ça, alors qu'on vient de le dire, hein, c'est deux hommes face à face, c'est un côté un peu dégueulasse, quoi, d'en favoriser un,
mais
on
le
peut faire une carrière ou l'empêcher de la faire.
Mais alors, si je suis excessif, je vais dire, la boxe olympique, c'est la moins pure et la moins noble qui existe. Parce qu'il y a des influences de pays, tout simplement. Donc les boxeurs en sont les victimes. Il n'y a pas là de matchmaker, encore avec l'image qu'on va avoir, l'argent, les bagues. Non, il y a des influences géopolitiques stratégiques, avec des pays très influents. Un petit pays de 2 millions d'habitants a la même importance que les États-Unis ou la Russie. Les officiels viennent de tous les pays au monde. Et historiquement, on sait qu'en boxe amateur, même si maintenant on atténue un petit peu cela, il y a des tendances avec des avantages qu'on donne à un boxeur par rapport à un autre. Je vais me faire des ennemis en disant ça, mais je le pense réellement. Voilà.
Mais vous avez tellement d'amis aussi que... Finalement.
Non, c'est pas ça.
Ça se verra pas.
Non, mais il faut jamais faire l'unanimité.
Jamais.
Jamais. C'est ce que Sacha
Guitry a dit. Et ne jamais laisser indifférent.
Jamais. Voilà.
Bah écoutez, vous ne nous avez pas laissé indifférent. On a pris énormément de plaisir à vous recevoir et parler de boxe avec vous, votre grande passion. De toute façon, on vous retrouve aux quatre coins des rings, j'ai envie de dire.
Avec plaisir.
Merci beaucoup, Jean-Philippe.
Salut, merci.
C'est la fin de ces grands formats du sport consacrés donc à la boxe et à certains de ces scandales. Mais comme on l'a dit avec Jean-Philippe, la boxe reste le noble art et une très belle discipline. Cette émission est d'ores et déjà disponible en VOD. Merci à celles et ceux qui ont participé à la préparation et à la réalisation de cette émission. Et bien évidemment, comme d'habitude, merci à vous pour votre fidélité.